In this video, I'm going to share 3 tips with you to help you hit better contact with your woods. So many beginner golfers struggle to make good contact with their 3-woods and they fear hitting their 3-woods. They'd rather hit irons instead. So we're going to help you correct a few things you might be doing fundamentally wrong with your woods so you can make better contact and you can start hitting a lot further distances with your woods. And when you can hit the golf ball a lot further with your woods, you can start attacking par 5s in 2. When you hit your tee shot on a par 5 and you've got 250 in and you want to try to reach it in 2 with your 3-wood, this becomes much more doable when you learn how to unlock distance and hit your 3-woods much straighter. So we're going to start with tip number 1. This is our setup in our stance and where we position that golf ball. So traditionally with a driver, we're going to position that golf ball off that left heel of our foot here. Right? So I'm going to set up with the ball more forward in my stance off that left heel for a driver, but we don't want to do this with our 3-wood. Instead, we want to move that golf ball back about 1 ball length, 1.5 ball lengths, so it's more towards center of our stance, but it's slightly forward of center. So if we had a center line now that we're drawing down the middle of our stance here, then you'll be able to see that golf ball is about a golf ball to a golf ball and a half forward of our center line. So it's kind of in the middle between where we would position that golf ball with our driver and then dead center of our stance. So that's the more approximate location that you want your golf ball for hitting your woods. And the reason we move that golf ball back slightly for woods is we want to be able to catch that golf ball on the descending blow with our wood. If we had it more forward, then by the time the wood gets to that golf ball, it's going to start moving on an upsending attack, and this causes you to end up clipping the top of the golf ball more likely, and you're going to end up topping the ball. And a topped golf shot is not ideal. We would rather hit down on the golf ball, making crisp contact with the club face into the back of the ball, and then slightly take a divot in the ground, and this is going to launch that golf ball up into the air. Your club face on your 3-wood has loft on it, so it'll do the work for you. We don't need to worry about trying to arch our body and lean backwards. We don't want to be leaning back, trying to swing up and lift up on the golf ball. Let that golf club do the work for you. It's going to launch that ball higher by just using the natural loft on the club. So we want to hit it with a descending strike, meaning the angle of attack of that golf club is coming down to the ball rather than with our driver where we're swinging up on the ball with an upswing, and that's causing us to sweep it off the tee. But since this is not teed up, this ball's sitting on the ground, we need to treat it like our iron shots and hit that golf ball, then hit the ground, take a shallow divot, and that's going to launch that golf ball higher in the air. So if you find yourself struggling to get height on your shots, it could be the fact that you're just not making the right descending angle of attack into that golf ball, and there's a few things we can do and some extra drills we'll talk about in other videos to fix that. But for this video, tip number 1, we want to move that golf ball slightly forward of center in our stance. Tip number 2, we talked about not wanting to be behind the ball, swinging on an upswing with tilted shoulders. Instead, tip number 2, we want to have level shoulders. So when we approach the golf ball and we get set up to it, we want to make sure that our shoulders are nice and level. We don't want to have shoulder tilt like we do with our driver. So make sure your shoulders are nice and level. Bend over at the waist to get your posture set up for your shot, and then you're going to be ready to go. So a nice level shoulder plane. And again, this is going to help us on the downswing when we're coming into that golf ball on a descending angle of attack. And then tip number 3 is going to be the divot that we're making. We want to actually take a divot with our woods, but we don't want it to be a thick or deep divot. It needs to be very shallow, very thin. And to do that, we need to practice without a golf ball, just understanding what it feels like to actually hit the ground and make contact with the ground with our club. Many of you are probably struggling to hit your 3-wood because you're again trying to lift up on the shot, so you're coming into that golf ball never even making contact with the ground. Instead, you're hitting the top half of the golf ball, and this is probably leading to these really low line drive shots or topped golf shots that only go 15 to 20 yards in front of you. So instead, we need to just set up like we would normally get ready to hit a golf ball. And then we're going to move back a little bit and do our practice swings. And during these practice swings, practice grazing that ground right where that golf ball would normally be. So get the feeling of what it's like to actually hit the ground with that 3-wood. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take some full practice swings here, turning back, just making sure I feel that the sole of my club is just grazing the ground ever so slightly, taking a really shallow divot. And you'll get that feeling and that sensation doing this 3 or 4 times, and you'll be able to tell the different times when you hit it really thick or really hard, where you're taking deeper divots, and you'll be able to tell when you're taking shallower divots. If you're on hitting mats, if you're on actual turf, on grass, then you're gonna actually see the divots, so you'll be able to see how deep you're taking your divots, and you'll be able to keep practicing and working on it until you can get it shallowed out. So those are the 3 simple tips: working on our stance, making sure that ball position comes back in our stance a little bit relative to our driver, but it still needs to be forward of the center line so that we can adjust for having a longer club. Again, the shorter our clubs get, the more that ball moves back in our stance. So our wedges are gonna be more back towards the center line. Our longer irons, our woods, our drivers are gonna be more forward in our stance. Now with our wood, we're gonna make sure that our shoulder plane is nice and level when we are setting up the golf ball. And this also helps us on the downswing when we start to move our body weight and fire our hips and get our weight transitioning forward. We wanna be able to have that, that sternum center line here directly over the golf ball when we're making contact. Whereas with a driver, typically we're trying to stay behind the golf ball and sweep up on it. But with our 3-wood, we want our body to be moving more forward. We want that center line here in my sternum to be over the top of that golf ball, in line with it when we're coming down into the golf ball making contact. So again, we can do this by making sure we have more of a level shoulder plane, and then making sure we're taking a divot, so having a descending strike on that golf ball to make a divot in the ground, but we don't want it to be a very big divot. We want to be able to just graze that golf ball off the ground, create that divot, and that golf ball will launch up high into the air using the loft on the club face itself. So don't try to help the golf ball up, try to strike down on the golf ball and it'll pop up on its own thanks to your 3-woods loft. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Share this channel with a friend who plays golf. Let's get more people into the game, learning how to play golf, and it'll be more fun for you and your friends if you guys can go out and play better rounds of golf after implementing these different tips in these videos. So I appreciate you being here, giving me some time to watch today's tips and lessons. You can find more about our training programs, our drills, our different practice plans that we have available for golfers to utilize at FoyGolfAcademy.com, which will be linked below in this YouTube video.